calling all misfits, rebels, leaders, and teachers, welcome to the one place where the only way to fit in is by standing out, where big goals are met with even bigger action, and where we talk through then tackle all things entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Kelsey Knudsen, and this is the Get Shit Done podcast. Welcome to the Revolution. Well, my friend, I was wrong. Planning is freaking hard when you don't know what is going on in your life, and today we're going to talk about it. This episode is a deep dive into what works with planning, what doesn't work with planning, when to make adjustments, why I'm even having this conversation. I'll share more of those details. And ultimately, this should give you a permission and roadmap on how to make your business really work for you. And sometimes that changes. So let's dive on in. Here's the deal. I have always been the person who plans my year in pencil and based off recent events. I highly encourage you to tackle it the same way. I know many a business owner who don't plan at all. I think there is a certain level of success that's still achievable if you just kind of go through the motions of your business. I think that you can still be quote unquote successful and live a pretty fulfilled life if you just kind of go through it. But I think for us rebels, as people who have really big, audacious goals, who want to build an empire, who want to make significant change in the world, who want to just do things different, we have to plan a little bit. We have to strategize. We have to create a roadmap of how to get there. And I'm going to share why I do it the way that I do and vulnerably how I was wrong and naive to some things. So first things first, I've always been someone who's planned my year in pencil. I still, knock on wood, highly recommend that because I think it's important to have a vision, a direction you are taking things. But I also think sometimes life literally can pick up that roadmap and game plan and move it into a different path. And that just has to happen sometimes. So I think having the flexibility there is super important. And even just after all the recent stuff that's been going on in my life, I still stand by that. Plan your year in pencil, but still do it. And it allows you to still be able to make decisions and be able to make action steps that are strategic and moving towards your goal, right? I've given this analogy before speaking or coaching some of my clients where it's like, if you don't have a game plan, how do you ever know when you got there? How do you know what's successful? How do you know what's working and what's not working? So I'm a big advocate for having some form of a plan. I think the caveat and the part I was wrong about is that sometimes that has to change. And I did not realize how hard that can be sometimes when you are living in a season of complete unknown. I also think the reason why planning in pencil is crucial, especially for the year, is it allows you to be adaptable. It provides that direction, that clarity, but pencil can be erased. It's not committal. It's a little commitment, and I think that's really important. So here is where I was wrong about planning. It's on paper, sounds great. When it's just you, pretty doable. When you have good members on your team and you're all on the same page and rowing the boat in the same directions, also very realistic to have a good game plan, be able to stick to it. Here's where it's really freaking hard, and I had no idea how hard. When you are living in a perpetual state of gray, where what you know for sure is that you will not know for a while, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? How do you navigate? And me, the get shit done girl, the executor, the action taker, I lived in that season very recently where all I knew is that I would not know for a while, and it ate me alive. It was really hard, and that's what I got wrong. I did not understand that. I did not understand that something could be so disruptive personally, and what was going on in my life kind of would lead to two very different paths and would also, in some ways, allow me to make different decisions in my business. In other ways, this whole exercise was really affirming in some of the things that I'm changing in my business. I shared in the last 2 episodes. So if you haven't listened to those, check them out. All that to say, in a season of gray, of unknown, of uncertainty, where you are not sure of something pretty significant that can have ripple effects in your business, it's really hard to plan. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you've lived in that season and I didn't get it before. But boy, do I get it now. And I just also at the same time think that in those seasons of unknown, uncertainty, disruption, I think that's also a great time to revisit your plan and still maybe you make adjustments, maybe you condense it, maybe you simplify it, maybe you adapt it to what makes sense for the now and then revisit later. But all that to say, this whole journey, this whole process of what's been going on has really reaffirmed how important it is to have a plan, because a plan gives you focus and it provides clarity. And in my circumstance, it was like the one thing I kind of did have control over. You know, there were so many things I did not have control over, but knowing when I would wake up and what I would tackle for the day, I mean, that was one of the things I really actually could do. And also playing out all the scenarios, it helps reaffirm again some business decisions that I've been in the process of making, but now it's made them like concrete and clear, because regardless of what outcome was to come, these changes needed to happen and they make sense, and I'm excited about them. And like I said, I shared them last week, so check those out if you didn't listen to that episode yet. But all that to say, I just really stand behind the importance of planning. I also humbly come before you and acknowledge that in some seasons of life, it's really freaking hard. And that's true. So I lived in a perpetual state of gray. It was pretty much for a month and a half, and it was a personal thing that would impact me pretty significantly when both outcomes, like I said. And that being said, I mean, to the point where like I had to make changes in my business regardless, kind of, if that makes sense. I needed to make some adjustments just in my schedule and commitments, but also in my offer suite in my business. I talked about that last week. And when I was living in that state of gray, I just was so craving an answer, even if it was like worst case bad news scenario. I just wanted to know. And for me, that was just really difficult to live in. So if you've ever been in that season, I am sorry. It sucks. And I get it. I get it. And I get how paralyzing that can be. And my intention with the rest of this episode is actually have some tips on how I navigated that time of my life and what I'm doing on the other side of it, to make some sustainable changes in my business that feel good and aligned, and not like I'm rushing to do it, but that just feel like it's the right thing to do. And I'm really clear on that. I'm really excited to share that. So all that to say, I was living in a season of gray meaning, again, personal things. It's like it could go down one path or the other, and I just did not know. And the answer was I wouldn't know for a while. Time would tell. And so here is what I was able to do during that time. My game plan for the month, the first thing I had to do was make some changes. That's a big reason why this podcast was on hold for a while. For me personally, I don't have a ton of capacity to create and be inspirational and honestly get ready and plan and strategize and make decisions when I'm living in a state of uncertainty. It's almost like it is the bare minimum. What are the things that like I absolutely have to do and can commit to doing, and giving myself the permission to like push off the rest. That was the very first thing I did. I entered this season. It was clear that it was going to be kind of a journey, and I just lowered the expectation of myself because I wasn't going to make the best decisions that were for the right reasons. I wasn't going to create the most interesting, best content that I could. And it just felt forced. And ultimately, I report to me. I mean, I'm the CEO of myself, right? And so it was on me to hold myself to it or not. And I gave myself the permission to let some of that stuff go. That was the best thing I did. And it was the first thing I did in this season of life. Then from there, I really focused on myself. I recognized that so much of life is outside of our control. We can have like the best business plan and roadmap and, you know, KPIs and all that stuff, all the stuff that we're tracking, which I love and I still do and I still think are super important. But sometimes life just throws a complete curveball that is out of your control. And when that happened to me, I realized the best thing that I actually could do in that was take care of myself. And I mentioned this again on a previous episode, so if you want more, go listen to that one. But all that to say, it just really became clear that that's one thing I could do, one thing I could commit to doing, one thing that was low-hanging fruit. It was easy, and I would never regret spending more time on taking care of myself, being kind to myself, napping, like just giving myself time to process, reaching out to the people who I felt comfortable sharing things with, and ultimately just really attending to my own needs and letting that be a high priority. Then from there, it was like, okay, thinking of the business, what's the absolute immediate needs of my business? And again, anything that was like a decision making, anything creative, strategic, anything extra. So like new commitments. I even have a friend group that I took myself out of for a minute just because I had no capacity for anything like that. And I just said that to people, I just don't have capacity right now. And safeguarding my time and my energy and my commitments to that, I think, was also super important during this time. It allowed me to take what little energy and effort I had in me and really focus it where I had to. I had to take care of my clients. I had to make sure bills were paid. I still did my month-end audit, which is something I actually I've grown to like enjoy, which may sound like crazy to you, but it's true. And just acknowledging the bare basic needs of my business and making sure I can still show up for those. And then on the days where I couldn't show up and give my best, communicating that, both to my team, but to clients or people who were impacted by that. And I think that was very important. I mean, the way I look at it, if I were like a surgeon, if I mentally, emotionally am not operating at my best, you would want me to operate on you. And granted, business is not life-saving service, but I just know if I wasn't able to give my best, that was worth acknowledging and saying and communicating to people, because at the end of the day, I'm still human too. So what else did I do during this time? I spent a lot of time cleaning and organizing, cleaning my home. I mean, we just moved in, so that also plenty to do there, but I felt like I needed to direct that energy somewhere. And since I couldn't be spending that time creating because I didn't know where we were headed, it was like we had no clear destination for a while. I just also needed to put that energy somewhere. So I listened to a lot of podcasts, true crime podcasts. That's kind of my zone out stuff. And then it cleaned both my physical space, but also my business space, things like organizing photos and documents and going through my Google Drive and cleaning that up. So basic stuff, but stuff that long-term is going to be beneficial anyways. And it felt good. It felt productive to do that. And because it wasn't, again, decision-making, strategic, creative, I wasn't worried about where my headspace was at during that time, but it's something that felt like I still felt like I was contributing to my business in a way, if that makes sense. I don't know. That might not make sense to you, but that's something that I spent a lot of time doing, and it worked well for me. And what else happened during this gray season when planning was laughing at me was communication with my partner. And I got it wrong. Like, there's a few times I definitely got it wrong and wasn't as clear as I thought I was, and had expectations or frustrations and wasn't communicating. And that's 100% on me in owning my stuff, but also just learning to communicate with my team members and just the necessary people within my community. So that way they knew what was going on. Because I mean, as much as we try to like put up a mask and a shield and pretend we like got our shit together, sometimes we just don't. And I recognize like everyone who knew me well could tell something was up. And I'm sure some of you listening to this, family, friends, maybe you're listening and you're like, yeah, I know. And I'm here for you. And I respect that and thank you. But I'll share my story in time. Again, it's just not the time right now. And I will in time because I think it's important to talk about it. But just know, like, during this season, these are the few things I was able to do. And also know that I'm like just getting out of it too. Like, I'll be very honest and authentic about that. I'm just getting on the other side. I feel like I just see the light. Again, I feel like the lights just came back on. And so I'm still reorienting myself and trying very hard, even though it's hard for me, to not just like dive headfirst and try to take over the world. But instead focusing on really strategic, small next steps, sustainable, still putting myself first, still all those things. Anyways, all that to say, after cleaning, that just felt good. It felt good to organize and clean. And again, it was productive. And anything that involved like a big decision just was not able to happen. Anything creative was not able to happen, but organizing worked for me. Communication was the other thing. Again, that was super important to everyone who was impacted, and just also being aware that I don't have to share everything to everybody. I mean, that's also really hard, being the face of your own business and finding that fine line between like being authentic and relatable and sharing. But during that time, I was like not online at all. I totally pulled away pretty much everywhere. And that's what I needed to do for myself at that time. So don't be afraid to do that if that's what is best for you in that season. And then the other thing, like I said, pushing off the decisions and creativity. I reassessed my launch calendar during this time. I also really sat and thought a lot about like what's next for my business, where is it headed, why is it going that way. I made some personnel changes that were already in motion, but I solidified those during this time. What else did I do? I also just like gave myself space. Like I recognize now on this side of things, like I was go for so long. Honestly, since getting engaged, it was like get engaged, plan a wedding pretty quick, have these financial goals, hit those goals, buy a home, move into the home, host a couple retreats. And it just was boom, 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 boom. So I also give myself the time and space just to process all of that. And planning wise, like allowing that to be a part of the game plan and being cool with that. I think that also was really beneficial and helpful. And we had wanted to migrate platforms during this time. We pushed that timeline down the road, and all of that has been good and feels really good. And I think that all of this to say, adjusting your plan sometimes is the best thing you can do. I think that, there's a fine line. There's times where I see business owners I'm coaching who will come up with a game plan and then totally deviate from it. They get distracted or shiny object syndrome, and they want to do other things or focus on other things. And sometimes it's frustrating as a coach to see that, because it's like, no, we created this plan. What are you doing? But I do think there's also some reality that sometimes that pivot is the best thing you can do, both for like your own mental health, but also the longevity of your business and your relationships and all of that stuff. So I think there's seasons of that. And I don't think I really honestly got that until very recently, like how significantly a personal thing can rock your business world and what to do with that. So I was wrong. I was wrong about the planning thing. I wouldn't do it in Sharpie. I think doing it in pencil, but I also don't regret having a process for planning. Heck, I have a course coming and a whole segment on it is on planning, and I plan to keep it because I think it's that crucial. So I want to talk a little bit about I shared, how complicated that time was and what I was able to focus on, and how that big old list was really condensed and specific and slow and intentional. But now I also want to talk about planning wise, what I think should stay, what I think is important with this stuff. And I think plan the year in pencil. I still stand behind that. I think it's important to know the vision, the long-term goals, where your business is headed. I think it's important for your team to know that from you too. And then from there, I'm still a big fan of checking in quarterly, auditing what is working, what is not. Do the next couple months, like the plan for those months, does that still make sense? Does that still align? Does that still feel good? Do we have capacity for that? Do we have budget for that? All those things. And then at the end of every month, every single month, I do an audit, and I still do it. And during this season, I still did it. And even though financially this last month was not what it has been, trajectory wise, it was going up and doing great. And but I don't consider that a failure, because I think it's what I needed to do and where I needed to focus my energy. And I don't have any regret in where I spent my time and how I recalibrated during that season. But it's still hard. It's hard to the ego. And I wouldn't know if I didn't face the numbers. So I'm proud of myself for continuing to do that. I fully stand behind my month-end audit. I talk about it a lot. I block off the first of the month. And then if the first is on the weekend, I move it to have it be the first Monday. It's my little money day. I go over my KPIs. Part of this season, this gray season I was in, I redid my KPI sheet, and I actually really like it because I plugged in some formulas, and now it does the math for me. So that's great. But all that to say, I highly recommend that you do a month-end audit. Every person listening to this podcast, for the love of God, if you're not doing an audit of some sort at the end of every month, if nothing else from this episode, please do that. And when you're in those seasons of uncertainty and just potential big change in your business, even better reason, because it's going to give you the data of what's working, what's not. I also built out KPIs for my new team members that are coming on, that are going to listen to this episode moments after this uploads and edit it for me. I built KPIs for us, and that's something I was able to do during this gray season too. So living in a season of uncertainty, is it Kelsey's happy place? Absolutely freaking not. It was hard. I don't do well there. I can deal with the worst news ever all the time. I've had a lot of hard stuff in my life, but that I can at least take action on. The unknown sucks. And if you're in a season of unknown, I just want this episode to be dedicated to you because I want you to know it's not going to be for forever. And there are some things you can do to still feel productive and feel a sense of purpose in your work. And maybe instead of having a mission statement that is this big and wide, maybe it just condenses for that season of life, and that's just where it needs to be for right now. And as you're listening to this, I just want to leave you with a couple things to think through. If you're maybe in a season of gray and just coming out of it, the lights are coming back on, like I was saying earlier. If you're where I'm at today, be kind to yourself. Don't just pick up right where you left off prior to all of this. I've spent the last couple of days kind of recalibrating and easing back in and getting clear on where my time and energy needs to go, where it's best going to serve me and my business. Also still really protecting myself and focusing on myself now more than ever. I would say I'm back into kind of that routine, and it feels awesome. And just having those hard deadlines, hard times of the day where I'm done, hard days of the month where it's blocked off and it's like, no, this is the day I audit my business. Like no meetings, and don't deviate from that. And then I'm still focusing on keeping limiting my distractions, not committing to new things, limiting social interactions. Right now, I'm still regaining my energy, like my social battery. I feel like I'm still rebuilding that muscle, and I'm just doing what I can, man. That's really the name of the game right now. I think that's the game plan. I do have to say, planning is what also got me back in. So don't take this as like, oh, planning's out the window. Kelsey doesn't do it anymore. Planning is what got me back in the game. It gave me a process. It took the overwhelm out of getting back in, and it gave me just like a roadmap of content. I mean, even content creation. I'm so systematic in how I do things, and I'll share more as episodes come out because I think it's important to share some of my processes, and it may take some of the overwhelm out for you. All that to say, like, the plan is what helped me stick to this. I just also reassessed it pretty recently, and I made some changes, and I feel really good about them. And having that process, that initial like pencil in for the year, audit quarterly, check in monthly, I just really stand behind that. And if you're in a gray season where it feels like that's the last thing you want to do, maybe it's the first thing that you should do. And also just lowering that expectation, adjust your schedule as you need to, push back that launch if you need to, push back that onboarding or that hiring or that client if you need to, and get your house in order. Maybe the best thing you can do right now for yourself in your business is clean house, clean physical house, and clean digital house too. So all that to say, I'm getting back in the game. I feel good, and I'm grateful for this experience because it's taught me a lot, and it just helped me understand something that I never really got before until, unfortunately, I had to go through it. And that's just that season of unknown and how it can really impact the growth of your business, but it doesn't have to be for forever, and it doesn't mean you're a failure, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. So all that to say, thanks for hanging out on this episode. If you enjoyed it this week, I would really appreciate your help on something. We are trying to collect reviews. When we first started, we got a bunch of them, which was awesome, but it's been a while since we've had some fresh reviews. So if you found something extra helpful or relatable, I'd love to hear it. We're on all the podcasting places, but Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you get the gist. Those are all great places. And I would just love to hear from you. Love to hear your biggest takeaway from the episode. And just want to thank you so much. So thank you, and I will catch you in September. Hey, thanks for being a part of the Get Shit Done revolution. My hope is this episode sparked a fire in you, equipped you with some practical next steps, or inspired you to take action towards your goals. If it did, please help spread the word by sharing this episode or leaving a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're tuning in. Now it's time for me to hand over the keys and let you get shit done.